For those of you who are joining the webinar, we will start shortly. We just want to allow others to join before we start. Thank you for joining us today. We will be starting the webinar in a couple of minutes. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Unlock the Value of Clinical Data Science with Signals Clinical. I'm Mark Whedon, and I'm thrilled you joined us for our first Signals Clinical Connect webinar. Brent Myers, Don Sullivan, and Philip Ross will share how Revity Signals can help you streamline clinical data review and medical review in your organization. A quick overview of what to expect. The webinar is scheduled to last 1 hour, and we will leave time to answer as many of your questions as we can at the end. So feel free to enter your questions at any time. And before we get started, a couple of housekeeping notes. First, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available online soon. And finally, we encourage you to engage with us. Please use the Q&A feature to share your thoughts or ask a question at any time. These are a brief overview of the learning objectives for today. We shared these objectives with you when you registered, so we will try to make sure that we answer all these questions and provide all this information to you today. And to get started, we're going to have a brief poll. The first polling question is, what are your greatest clinical trial software needs? And you can pick as many choices as you need. The first is faster access to data. The second is easy to use analytics or workflows. The third option is automated audit trail. The fourth option is seamless team collaboration. And the last option is high customization or configurability of software. So please provide an answer to the poll. We're getting some good responses. I'll just give another minute or so for responses. Okay, I think we have a good number of responses. Um, Brent Myers will be our first speaker today, and I will we'll get the webinar started, and I'll turn it over to Brent um, to for some analysis of the results and the rest of the webinar. Thank you, Brent.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate the introduction and the opening there. I unfortunately can't see the results right now, but we'll get back to you sort of on those results at another time. And I'll see if I can get those, and I can help use them to color our Q&A towards the end. But that said, as Mark says, my name is Brent Myers. I'm based out in Portland, Oregon, and I lead our clinical business here at Remedy Signals. And my background really comes in the CRO space, CRO and defense space, and I've been running around deploying clinical analytics solutions across the industry at all sizes of companies, for the majority of my career. So Remedy Signals, right? So we're a 40-year-old software company that really builds solutions from the earliest phases of discovery and development and clinical and manufacturing to really answer targeted workflow and analytical questions. So within the clinical space, really, this is obviously where we'll focus today. We build analytical workflows and exploratory analytics. And so that really sits downstream from the data collection and then really also before sort of the submissions aspects of clinical process. And really we see the gap really being the lack of access to analysis ready data and reproducible decision making, being able to sort of track your decisions, being able to create that audit trail seamlessly. And also really we see a lot of our customers waiting till the end to sort of do their analysis, or using sort of antiquated tools to sort of be able to answer various operational and safety and efficacy questions, with sort of tools that are not really relevant to sort of what they're trying to answer, or not quick enough. So really we try to be able to provide solutions that allow you to get access to the data earlier, iterate on looking at your data, iterate on sort of your data cleaning, and then really get to faster results, get to submission quicker. So really, we've been very successful in being able to use Spotfire for a lot of our analyses, exploratory analyses. And Spotfire is a phenomenal tool at being able to build analyses, visualize and analyses in a broad variety of clinical use cases. It is a highly flexible tool that allows you to apply different modeling and analytical languages, as well as sort of tie that in with sort of the visual and sort of all the power that come with sort of visual analytics. And it's really good at sort of those single study analyses, and again, like really visualizing and sort of overlaying it with different models. But what if you want to be able to extend, to very specific clinical capabilities, right? What if you want to be able to connect directly to clinical data sources? What if you want to be able to standardize your analytics? What if you want to be able to have pre-built visuals, right? To reduce sort of the learning curve to building analytics, or to reduce sort of the development time to building analytics, or perhaps you want to also look across multiple studies, right? Do that cross-study analysis for operational questions or safety questions. Or maybe you want to automate sort of the data review, be able to track data changing, right? These are all things that are clinical specific, that you might need to sort of enhance your study team collaboration. And this is why we built Signals Clinical. Signals Clinical, we'll talk more and more about it as we go on, provides that real-time access, self-service analytics, and also the ability to trace and track your decisions, right? So really, it allows you to be able to connect to those clinical data sources and really improve the ability to sort of map and transform your data such that it is now actionable for you to do your analyses, and then be able to serve it up not only in pre-built visuals, but also into Spotfire. And we'll talk a lot about that, how it ties back into Spotfire, and also give you that cross-study capabilities. But probably most importantly, to now that you've sort of accessed and analyzed your data, to be able to trace your decisions, meaning know when your data has changed, be able to create data issues, and create data queries, and have sort of that communication and audit trail you have as you perform your analyses. But ultimately, what we're talking about today is the best of both worlds, right? You get those easy to use clinical workflows built in Signals Clinical, but if you want to go customize, you can pull the data out into Spotfire and customize to your specific needs. So let's talk more about that, right? So Signals Clinical, really about driving that collaboration, right? So where we can sort of continue to build out our analytics for different use cases, right now focusing on sort of the data review and medical monitoring aspects, but really it's about Signals Clinical is about giving you access to the data, giving you the tools to quickly identify important data, and create information that you can then collaborate on and make actionable. So let's talk about like how, right? So this is just sort of gives you an idea of some of the different visuals that we'll demo here in a little bit as well. But a broad variety of allowing you to sort of look at like large level views of your data, and then continue to zoom in to more discrete row level of data. And really within that, being able to quickly tag data with notes, or again, create an issue or create a query directly upon the data, and then have dashboards allow you to track that. So there are a variety of sort of visual means for you to go in there and be able to quickly analyze it. And really the goal is to make these as easy as possible to use, right? To make the learning curve as low as possible, and make this seamless and not a cluttered experience. So let's talk what this actually looks like in real life, right? So, how does this actually help with collaboration, right? So medical monitor could be looking at lab timeline and be able to sort of identify an outlier and create a data issue, right? For whatever that reason might be. Then that issue is received by the data manager within Signals Clinical. They, again, if appropriate, can submit a query directly back to EDC through Signals Clinical. And let's say they're curious if there's a broader pattern, right? Or they have some other sort of specific question, or they have some other model that might be able to analyze like why this issue arose, right? They can push this data out into Spotfire and run with whatever model they might already have, and analyze it directly in there. And then within Spotfire, you can then highlight specific data, and then create a data group or cohort of interest, and then go see if there's any, again, safety issues or other data issues directly within Signals Clinical. So you're sort of creating this virtuous cycle of being able to have these pre-built, standardized, visuals and workflows and communication, while also I might have some specific analysis that I've done in Spotfire that I want to tie back into sort of what I'm looking at, and you can do that with Signals Clinical. So really, just to recap that, right? Signals Clinical really provides those fit-for-purpose workflows, and Spotfire provides those sort of custom analytics, so sort of multi-study review, single study review. But the beauty of it is that you get the best of both worlds. You can pull those data from Signals Clinical into Spotfire, have that as your one data source, and rather than connecting all your Spotfire analyses to lots of different data sources, you can connect it just to Signals Clinical, and it also gives you that ability to look across studies. Something unique again to Signals Clinical, and really you can parse down into small subsets of the data, but ultimately then you can also create these data groups or cohorts of interest and communicate those back and forth between the two. So my final point before I hand it off to my colleagues, right? Signals Clinical is a SaaS solution that we take pride in. And it's constantly evolving in nature of adding more and more capabilities as a secure and quality software solution that is constantly improving, right? But ultimately, as we talked about, you get the best of both worlds. You get that fit-for-purpose workflows that are pre-built, but you also get the custom analytics powered by Spotfire, the best analytics tool in the space. But ultimately, it also brings together everybody into one place, so you can have that point of collaboration rather than multiple tools or spreadsheets flying around. You can have the whole team go to one location. But also, we want to talk a little bit more about sort of the future state as well. We're working on, what we call augmented data review, right? What you'll hear a little bit about today is our designs for using natural language to generate, custom listings and insights from those listings, right? And sort of some of the future state from there as well, as we try to sort of build out, patient narratives and data mapping, right, to sort of further automate those. So ultimately, you'll hear from my colleague Don, who will demo the aspects of Signals Clinical, and you hear from my colleague Philip, both who are, been in the industry for quite a long time and have an extraordinary breadth of sort of expertise that they're going to share with you. So I look forward to you seeing them. And with that, I wish you a happy Juneteenth. You get a chance to celebrate. And now I will ask if my colleague Don is ready. If not, I will talk more about Signals Clinical.
Ready. Thank you, Brent. Hi, everyone. This is Don Sullivan. I've been Brevity Signals about 10 years, but in 2002, I joined Spotfire, and around 2007, that's when we started to build a clinical practice there, focusing on building analytics in Spotfire, and that's work we're continuing here at Brevity Signals. So I'm excited today to show you both Signals Clinical, our SaaS solution, Brevity Signal solution, but I'll also show you analytics with Spotfire and how the two systems can interact. So let me come off camera here. And so Signals Clinical is a SaaS solution. It's available through a web browser, and it has an information model. Now, as a customer, you have complete control over this model. There's this concept of measurement types. And the idea is when those are set up, you can map studies to basically similar structure. So the idea is once studies are mapped, you can actually do analytics not both within but across studies, pool data. And I'll show you examples of pooling data and looking at that in Spotfire. Signals Clinical has its own analytics. You can do line listing review, and you can then propagate queries to Rave or Viva if you're using either of those as an EDC. So let me go ahead and start here with a study, this study 24. We're going to focus on the visuals first, and we're going to tell a little bit of a story. So the data set we're working with, we use it. It's a publicly available data set for a drug called xanomeline, which is used for the treatment of schizophrenia. It is an effective drug. Some patients, though, have gastrointestinal side effects, so they stop taking the drug. A study was done with a transdermal patch, and that's the data we have here. So when we look at it, you'll notice there is a lot of skin irritation, other things consistent, perhaps with the transdermal patch. But I want to go through a story here, tying together visuals, patient profiles, and line listing review. And so within the system, there are population level views, there's adverse events, there's Hy's Law or drug-induced liver injury, labs, and vitals. And at the subject view, we have tabular patient profiles, we have subject timeline and visual profile, and subject vitals. So let's start with adverse events. So here we have a bar chart which is showing us the count of events. Most common number of subjects had an event, most common to least is how they're ranked, and they're colored by severity. So of course you can go ahead and filter to certain severities. I'm looking at just moderate or severe here. You can switch this back and forth between the dictionary derived term, which in this case is PT, or body system organ class. Now, the most common events were in general disorders and administration site conditions and skin and subcutaneous tissue disorders. In fact, if we go ahead and select some of the more severe events here and look at the row level data, we can see they're all application site pruritus and dermatitis and other things here. So that's consistent with the skin irritation. But let's go ahead and look at the level of dictionary derived term. And since this is for the treatment of schizophrenia, maybe we want to focus on nervous system disorders. So let's choose nervous system disorders as our SOC. And now we're looking at just those events. So we can see the number of subjects that had dizziness, headache, or syncope. For example, looking at this, we can see 3 subjects had at least one severe event of syncope. So perhaps we want to learn more about this, and we want to go to a patient level to understand this. Well, in Signals Clinical, it's as easy as you click on the segment you're looking at, and you're prompted to go to subject profile views or even right to the review listing step. So for the subject profile, when we click there, we have 3 options. We have a tabular patient profile. In the tabular patient profile, you have complete control over the page layout. You can control the order that these tables are seen in. Within the tables themselves, of course, you can sort the columns. You can save this as a view. You can hide columns. You can filter to certain rows. You have complete control over that.
Hi, Don. Sorry to interrupt you, but we're getting feedback from the audience that they can't see your screen. Would you mind taking a pause and resharing your screen?
Okay. Looks like I'm sharing my screen here, but
yeah, I can see it on my end, but it looks like the audience can't see it.
Do that again.
I can see it, but can folks in the audience confirm if they can see it? Yeah, I got confirmation now. Oh, so can you go back up again one more time? All right, good.
No
I got
problem.
confirmation. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Don.
No problem. So let me go back and repeat that briefly then. So if we're looking at the level of visuals and we're looking at adverse events, we have a bar chart here which shows the count of events. And you can see the most common here are skin irritation events. But if I want to focus on a certain system organ class, let's choose nervous system disorders. I can see the counts. The most common were dizziness and headache. But I might want to focus on these 3 subjects with severe syncope. So if I select them, I'm now prompted to go to a profile views or a listing view. So if I select the profile view, I have a page here where I have complete control over my layout of the tabular patient profile. And it's from this page you'd actually be able to do line listing review, which I'll show you in a few seconds. Now there's also a visual patient profile, which our customers find to be very useful, is to see the data on a timeline where you can look at an individual subject. So let's choose subject 1170 here. And what we're seeing is we have the dosage, we have the adverse events, the list of ComMeds, and the labs. Now the labs are shown qualitatively, a green box, it's in the normal range, a red arrow, it's above the upper limit, arrow pointing down is below the lower limit. It's normalized to the study day. Here's day 1. And you can see during the study itself, except for one lab, low albumin, we're in normal range for labs. So I'm going to turn those off and just focus on my adverse events. So here's that event of severe syncope. Remember these subjects, we picked them because they had at least one event of severe syncope. So if I look at this event, what is happening at this time point? Well, this is day 27. Now the utility is here, so I can see across domains. I can see on day 27 the dosing of the drug was stopped, but on day 26 there was a cluster of events. There was an increase in body temperature, extra sweating, hyperhidrosis, and there was an increase in blood pressure, hypertension. So their blood pressure increased. And when we look at their concomitant medications, we can see they were prescribed Cozar, which is a blood pressure medication. So a simple hypothesis here might be because they had an increase in blood pressure, they were prescribed the blood pressure medication. And if we look at the list of medications they had been on, it looks like they're naive to this drug or this class of drug. So a simple hypothesis may be that because they had high blood pressure, they were given a blood pressure medication they were naive to, and as a result, their blood pressure dropped and they passed out or they fainted. So in this case, the hypothesis might be that was the addition of the concomitant medication to treat high blood pressure, which caused the adverse event. Now we might want to capture this insight with the line listing review, and we'll do that in a second. Now we can also go on to patient vitals as well, so you can go ahead and see the vitals for this subject. We can look at blood pressure, pulse, and temperature. For example, here's blood pressure. Hypertensive crisis is this purple diamonds you can see on the timeline where that event occurred. But let's go back to the patient profile here and look at these adverse events. And there was that event of severe syncope we were talking about. So here it is. This is this event of severe syncope. So now I want to talk about Signals Clinical and its line listing review functionality. And the nice thing about its line listing review functionality is you can do your review entirely here in Signals Clinical, but this also interacts with Spotfire. So if you're doing analytics in Spotfire, which I'll show you in a little bit, you can also then do the line listing review here. So they both funnel into this line listing review. And you can basically have a listing of notes, open issues, queries, what the status is, the latest reviewer, etc. So this is a newly set up study. So all the data is listed as new. Now, in terms of the statuses for review, there's new, reviewed, and queried. If you do a refresh of data and the underlying data has changed, Signals Clinical will notice that and then will change the state to amended. So a lot of people ask, if you query something and then the query is processed in EDC, perhaps data is updated, when there's a refresh into Signals Clinical, how do you see that? Well, one of the notifications you get is the review state changes to amended. So let's come back here and work with this severe syncope. If I highlight it here, you can see now I have a review history, and it's telling me the data was added at this point. Now I can go in and review this and say, you know, I've considered this reviewed, so I'm going to click it reviewed. So what happens when I do that? The status changes, it captures the date and time. So I'm here in the Boston area, so this is US East Coast time. In the system, you are assigned a subgroup. So you have control over these subgroups. You can have as many as you want. I'm only displaying 2 of them. In this demo, I'm considered a medical reviewer, so I reviewed it, it's checked off. So this is how the system tracks that. Now, if there's an issue or you want to raise a query, you can do that as well. And when you start doing that, you'll start to see flags here for open issues and open queries. And to do that, I'm just going to change to a different subject, a different data table. But here's an example where some queries have been opened. You can see those flags. And if we look at the data for this subject, we see there's a lot of missing end dates, for example. So perhaps we want to follow up on that. This event here, the moderate erythema, I can go ahead and select this, and this is a missing end date. I might want to raise an issue. So here I'm going to raise this issue, and I'm going to say for the end date, I want to assign this to someone. I'll just assign it to myself so I can go back and see it. Anyone in the system can see it, but that's for notifications directed to me. You can give it a type. Maybe I want to clarify, give it a priority. I say it's moderate. I might say this is a missing end date. So I'll go ahead and raise that issue. So when I do that, you can see it's captured here in the history. You can click through and see the details. And if we go back to the table, now there's a flag here saying that the issue has been opened. If I want to go a step further, raising an issue, when you look at this, you actually have the option to create a query. So if you want to create a query and you're connected to either Rave or metadata, you can propagate that query directly from here. So for example, we have a test system of Rave, a test instance we use. And so if you're used to creating manual queries in Rave, essentially what this is using the Rave API to create a manual query, except you're just using Signals Clinical to send that query. So we'll say, create the query, give it a name, because this is what it will be in Rave. So I'll say missing end date. Choose a marking group and post that query. Now, if you hadn't logged in already to Rave, you will be prompted to do so. That only happens once during a session, so you would need your username, password, and then we'll go ahead and post that query. And if I type my password incorrectly, which I did not, we'll skip that and go to a previous example. You can see when we do that, what happens is once you've created a query, it actually goes ahead and returns to you the query ID from Rave. So that query has been propagated to Rave. It exists there. Now you would go ahead and process your query there within the EDC. You don't do any of that from Signals Clinical. Same would be as if you were using Viva as your EDC. And then when you do a refresh, the new data will come into Spotfire, into Signals Clinical. And what happens is here, see this red caret? This is the end date cell that we were talking about and raise the query. If this is updated with a date, for example, this will change to a purple outline and the status here would change to amended. So you'd immediately know that was there. You could filter to that, and then you can start to process that in Signals Clinical. Another thing I wanted to show, we'll go back here. I forgot to do this when I was showing you the severe syncope example, was you can leave notes to put context. So for example, here I'm going to say for the dictionary derived term, remember we thought syncope related to COSAR, treat high blood pressure. So you can capture insights like this and add that to the system so anybody working here can see it. This note is added and you have that there in the notes. So I would like to go back and show you some of the other visuals in Signals Clinical. And before I do that, though, I'm going to show you there is a dashboard for looking at issues and queries. So if you are using Signals Clinical and you want to look at track your issues and queries, you can do that. So the issues are what you're raising in Signals Clinical. Query is what you have propagated to the EDC. Now you can look at the level of site or the level of domain, and it basically tells you queried, open, or closed. So within this instance of Signals Clinical, you can see 23 issues queried, 6 that are open, 1 that's closed, and you can go right to the row level data for that to see the status of them, who raised it, how many days they've been open. On this dashboard, you can also see the queries from the EDC. So again, what site they're associated with or what domain, and you can do a query tracker. Now, the nice thing about this is it's returning the data from the EDC. These are the statuses from the EDC, not from within Signals Clinical. So this is what, in case Rave is telling us open, how many days open, who went ahead and raised it. So you have that dashboard. So that allows you to see the status of your queries directly from Signals Clinical without you having to go to the EDC. So hopefully that changes you, saves you some time and effort. So let me go back and show you some of the other visuals here, and then we'll start talking about how you can query data to extract it from Signals Clinical, either to get out to flat files or to look at in Spotfire. Now, there are other visuals built in. Standard visual here for drug-induced liver injury. Standard to have bilirubin on the y-axis, ALT on the x-axis. This data has been normalized to the upper limit normal. So here's the threshold for bili, 2 times upper limit normal, 3 times upper limit normal for ALT. So you can see there's one subject here that exceeds both of them, is considered to be in highest quadrant. If I click on that subject, you drill down to the individual lab tests. You can see them over a timeline, but you can also go to the subject profile or review listings from this step. There's a labs panel view, so you have control over what you want to see in this panel view, choosing what test category. You can go ahead and choose individual tests and look at them. If I want to just, for example, look at albumin, I can go ahead and just select that. And this responds to any interaction you do as well. So these high values here, if I wanted to analyze those, I can select them. And again, this prompts me to go to the profile or review the listings. I can click on profile, it takes me right to the profile page, and I can start to look at those subjects that I selected in the labs view. The last visual that's available I'll show you is there is a population level view for vitals as well. So you can filter to certain ranges and again, select populations of subjects and then go to their patient profile views. Now, anything you do in these visuals is persistent from one visual to another. So if I look at the adverse events, and let's just reset this and say I want to filter to a certain system organ class. In this case, let's choose hepatobiliary disorders. And there's this event here of hyperbilirubinemia. If I go ahead and select this, I can see if I go to the Hy's Law visual, I can see that's the data point that I selected. So this is a subject from the adverse events. So marking you do in one visual will propagate to the other visuals. Now I want to show you how you can search within data to extract that. So when I mentioned at the very beginning, when we're looking at studies, you can map those studies to a common data structure, which if you've done that, you can extract data and export it and do that within a single study or across studies. So I can, for example, come in here and say, I want to search for a certain study. Let's select an ID, but maybe I want to pool data from 2 studies. I have a low dose study and a high dose study. Let's go ahead and select them both. I'm building that selection there. And maybe I want to further narrow this down, delineate it for the demography. Maybe I want this only to be subjects above a certain age. I can go ahead and add that age range. Maybe I want 50 to 100. So now it's going ahead and creating that as a filter. And now it's ready to export this data. So when I do this, it'll give me a list of tables that I can export. And when I choose the tables that I want to export, and here you have that ability to choose what tables you want, and you say finish export, it'll just export them as a zip archive with CSV files. So if you're using Signals Clinical as a repository for your study information, it's not a black box. If you have mapped it in, you can get that data back out so you can look at it in other systems and work at it in other places. And one of those other places you can work with it is in Spotfire. And so we're going to switch to Spotfire, show you a little bit of analytics there, and then we'll come back to show you how that connects with Signals Clinical. Now, Signals Clinical right now focuses on safety data For example, if you wanted to work with efficacy data, here's some examples of oncology efficacy examples that could be built in Spotfire. Now, of course, we're not just limited to oncology. Spotfire is a general analytics tool, and we work in many therapeutic areas, but this is just an example from the oncology space. So here in Spotfire, you can see you have a standard waterfall plot, a percent change from baseline of tumor size. You can go ahead and select records and drill down. Visuals in Spotfire interact within tables, data tables, and across data tables. So I could look at prior cancer therapy and say, you know, I had 15 subjects previously on Herceptin. I can select them. I can then go back to that waterfall plot and just see those 15 subjects, or even just filter to them. If I want to see more detail about the best performing subjects here with the tumor regression, I can go ahead and select them and just see their details below. You can have things such as spider plots built, so a standard way of looking at the data here. Again, tumor size change on the y-axis, but each individual visit now is given its own data point, and you can color and size by any of the data in the underlying data table. So this example, we're looking at RECIST and also reasons for continuing or discontinuing. We can build swim plots, so you can see a swim plot for each subject. Perhaps the swim plot, you want to have each visit displayed. So here again, with color and shape, you can add additional detail. You can also be creative and use a swim plot, for example, to look at dosing. So for this subject, it's quite easy to see that their dosing stayed the same, 7.5 milligrams per kilogram. Only one change here, that star, looks like there was an adverse event. But this subject here, just by looking at it, it's quite obvious that there were a lot of changes. They went from green to blue, so they went from 5 mg per kg to 2.5. What happened? Well, open diamond, open circle, dose was not administered, adverse event. Some other reason why, probably trying to figure out whether to stay on the dose or not. And then it looks like the dose was cut in half after was another adverse event. So you can be very creative with how you show this data. And of course, you can have more than one visual on a page at the time. Spotfire is a great environment for visuals that interact. So if I wanted to look at my best performing patients here based on the waterfall plot that had the most regression of tumor size, I can select them. And now I'm looking at that, just those subjects over here in the spider plot. So with Spotfire, you can connect directly to Signals Clinical. And I showed you that example of a portfolio search in Signals Clinical. You can do a portfolio search from Spotfire to pull data into Spotfire from Signals Clinical. So I'm going to show you an example of that to bring in data into a blank session, but I'll also show you that if you've built an analysis in Spotfire, a template that has all your visuals already created, you can use that and pull data in to populate those visuals. So this is a blank session. I would say tools, go to Signals Clinical and say study overview, and it'll prompt me to log in if I hadn't, but you can see here, it looks very much like Signals Clinical. I have an option for portfolio search. Now, if I want to bring in data from just one study, I can click import. But if I want to go across studies, I would say portfolio search. So I'll say portfolio search here. Notice this interface looks very much the same as what we saw in Signals Clinical. So I would choose my studies. Let's just say I want to bring in data from 2 studies. Let me go ahead and choose the high dose study and the low dose study. And maybe we want to go ahead and again add some other filter for demography. If we say attribute in demography, perhaps we want to bring in only our data for our male subjects. We could go ahead and select that. And then all I have to do is click import. Now you can click all the data tables you want to bring in. The lab table is the largest. That will take a few seconds to bring in. So I'm just going to choose a subset, the adverse events and the demographics, and we'll go ahead and import that. And once that's done, now the data is in Spotfire. Here it is. So a table view, I can look here and say, show me my adverse events. And I just need to go into the properties and the columns. These are all the columns from the adverse events table. So we successfully imported the adverse events table. You can also see the demography table. If we bring this up and choose the demography table, same thing, all the data from the demography table. So I'm not going to build anything else here from scratch. This is just to show you that the data was imported, but of course now you have all the power and features available in Spotfire to build all these sorts of visuals and start to do an ad hoc analysis of your data. But another common use case may be that you're starting from a template in Spotfire that already has visuals created. So you'll notice this is very similar to what we saw in Signals Clinical. Here's an adverse events view. I may want to choose subjects that had severe syncope like I did before. There they are. I can go to the patient profile view and look at these subjects. So you can do very similar analytics in Spotfire, but you can also go and do additional things that aren't in Signals Clinical, that aren't there yet. So you can say, I might want to look at a custom list of adverse events, maybe by SMQ. So you could build a visual for that and say, I want to focus on a certain SMQ. Let's choose dementia. I'm interested in, I see one subject had delirium. I can choose this subject, and now I can go to their patient profile view and start to look at this subject. Okay. So the idea here is we have a pre-built template for analyzing and looking at our data. In this case, we're looking at study 21. What I can do here, though, is I can go ahead and do a profile search, a query of Signals Clinical, and bring in pooled data to Spotfire to update this and replace this. So you don't have to build from scratch. You can take a Spotfire template that already has all the visuals and calculations and functions built into it and import data from Signals Clinical. Now, this is the adverse events table that we're looking at. I might do something here just to show you that that we actually are going to be overwriting that. I'm actually going to bring up a table view, look at the adverse events, and in this case, just in this demo environment, I'm going to select all the adverse events and delete them. So now there are no adverse events in the adverse events table. It still exists, but it's empty. So there's nothing for the visuals to plot. But as soon as I bring in data from Signals Clinical, these visuals will reappear with that data. So I can say Tools, Signals Clinical, Study Overview, and it'll take me into this dialog. And again, I want to do a portfolio search. I'll go ahead and choose the studies I want. So let's choose the attributes. In this case, I'll choose study ID, and I want that high dose study and the low dose study. I'm going to go ahead and choose just the adverse events to replace, and we'll go ahead and import that, and then I'll take a second. So that data has been brought in, and let's go back to that PT page. So now you can see the PT page. Here we have that bar chart, but now it's actually taking the data. In this case, I have it set that it's splitting out by the two studies, but you could have them combined and start to visualize them all sorts of creative ways. So if you have any experience working with Spotfire, you know the full set of features and functions you have available to you now, this sandbox for you to continue to customize and analyze and look at your data. Now, the last thing I want to show is that when you do analysis in Spotfire and then you want to go to line listing review, you can do that. And so let's go back to the other example I was working with here, and we'll look at our preferred term bar chart. And so let's look at that adverse event preferred terms. And let's say when I'm looking at this, I filter to my nervous system disorders. And I, again, see these events of syncope. And there's the 3 severe syncope. Maybe I want to basically review all of them. I'll select every event of syncope. Here are the subjects that had syncope. I can go to a listings page. So here they are. Here's those subjects. These are all their adverse events for those subjects. But here's those events of syncope. And if all I do in Spotfire, just control click or shift click to select in the table, if I right click, I have the option that says Signals Clinical. And now I can track the review listings in Signals Clinical. So when I do that, it'll prompt me to give this cohort a name. That's how it identifies this group in Signals Clinical. So I might basically put in today's date and maybe say syncope and go ahead and create that. And once you do that, it automatically gives you a link to Signals Clinical for this study. Within Signals Clinical, you could go to a dialog and find that cohort, but since we're in Spotfire now, I can directly link to it. So it'll take us to, here it is. There are all those events that we identified in Spotfire. Here's the one that I just showed you earlier that we had marked as reviewed when I did the line listing review in Signals Clinical. Here it is, it's marked as reviewed. But here are all the other events. I just selected those in Spotfire. So I could review these individually. You can also review these in batch. So you don't have to go through each one, for example, and say reviewed or do whatever. You can go in and select a group if you know that these are all ready to close out. For example, I can review them in batch. So that's how you would have Signals Clinical work with Spotfire. You can send a list from Spotfire. So the question then is, what happens in Spotfire? If I go back to Spotfire here, you can see these are still listed as new. There's been no update from Signals Clinical because I haven't refreshed the data yet from this study. It doesn't happen automatically, but as soon as you do a data refresh, you'll notice any of the review data from Signals Clinical shows up in Spotfire. And again, that's just Signals Clinical study overview. Again, it's another one of these data imports. So I would just say study 24 import, and I will just choose my adverse events table. We'll go ahead and import that. And once that's done, we'll see when we look at that listings table in Spotfire, and we focus just on Syncope. So in this case, it reset it because it brought all the data back in. But if we go select that group again, adverse events, PTs, and just choose our subjects with Syncope, so that's all we're looking at. If I go to that adverse events listing, Syncope, now you can see here, it's basically everything I reviewed is flagged as reviewed. It has the time it was done, has the person who did it. So hopefully that gives you, a high-level overview of the functionality of Signals Clinical, what we can offer in terms of Spotfire analytics, and how the two systems do interact to meet your needs. And now I'd like to hand the presentation over to my colleague, Philip.
Yes, thank you, Don. And Mark, if you'd like to do the poll question.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. We're going to start Philip's session with a poll. And just a quick reminder before you can be answering the poll now, but a quick reminder, please submit any questions. We've been getting some good questions from the audience, but if you have a question that you haven't asked yet, please submit that in the Submit a Question panel. Okay, our second poll question is, what are your greatest opportunities for improvement? The first answer is accelerated data management. The second is faster access to powerful standardized analytics. The third is data science, including AI. And the fourth is improved identification and resolution of data issues. We're already getting some answers in, so just another minute or so for everyone to vote. Okay, we've gotten a good quorum here. So what we're seeing with the poll is that approximately 50% see that their greatest opportunity for improvement is data science, including AI. And about 38% are saying improved identification and resolution of data issues. Accelerated data management and faster access to powerful standardized analytics are both at about 11% each. So data science seems to have it's a great opportunity for Philip's talk, because he will focus on data science and AI during his session. Philip, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Just a quick check. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much. So as Brent did a great job introducing, and Don did an excellent job demonstrating, I'm going to briefly just restate that Signals Clinical provides data and medical review workflows that focus in three areas. They get your data automatically in real time. They provide robust self-service analytics that are very powerful and consistent in structure, and they trace your decisions, they trace your activity in a reliable way. And this drives your collaborative safety review and data query workflows with all of your data in one place. And in addition, if in the past you've used Spotfire or even other tools, you don't have to give those up, because you can access the data from Signals Clinical using Spotfire, as Don demoed, and you can use Spotfire to do custom analytics, whether that include novel use cases or efficacy or operations or ad hoc customized plots that you may need. And you can create cohorts for analysis. So where are we going? This is, I'm going to transition and talk a little bit about our current work on where we'd like to go in the near future. So we have this platform, Signals Clinical, with end-to-end access to your data, real time, it's automated. And what might AI allow you to do? Because it's fully automated, not just to access to your data sources, but also automates the data mapping and the data issue detection, there's a real opportunity to leverage AI in that context because the data is more standardized, it's cleaner, it is, you're not asking AI to figure out what data is just mapped wrong. You can, but you can also leverage that automation and ask AI to look for more sophisticated things. You can also, because there's robust analytics, you can use natural language prompts to generate custom listings. And because there's an underlying system with workflows, you can assemble patient narratives and perhaps various types of readiness reports, status reports on how close you are being able to submit or to a interim assessment. So, and part of our thinking about this is that we don't want to plug in AI just willy-nilly. We want to pair AI with the correct automation to give the combination an increased reliability and security, because security and reliability are key for us. So let's take a look at the case of natural language prompts to generate custom listings. We started looking at this with Gen AI, and in the course of that experience, we found that we could structure prompts that would generate reliable listings. So the first thing we might do is ask a prompt to confirm a role, and you don't actually need the person to tell you that. You might be able to tell that from the current Signals Clinical status, how they logged in. You also want it to, your prompt needs to specify the listing perhaps that you want to ask it for. Give me a concomitant medication listing. Data sources can be based off the listing type if our AI is allowed to know something about your client data in terms of the data structures and which data sources are automatically feeding your particular listing requirements. Key variables, you can specify those in your prompt, filtering criteria, sorting order. Finally, you want the prompt to trigger the AI to check its own work and to reflect back in its answer what it just did. So it's not a black box. You can recreate it on your own using Signals Clinical or Spotfire or any other tool. So we've done that has limitations, Gen AI, in terms of if you ask it too open-ended a question, it may begin to hallucinate. And so what we've done is begun to look at agentic AI and RAG as ways to first make the LLM more aware, able to access current information that it wasn't trained on. And also, the agentic AI is AI tailored for custom goal-centered tasks, focused tasks to complete, and that improves the reliability of these. So this prompt, let's zoom in on the prompt here, is asking this agentic AI. The agentic AI is simply recognizing you're on the session, and it asks you to describe in natural language what listing you want. So perhaps we ask it to give me a listing patients over 65 years old with syncope who are taking antihypertensive medications. This requires data from multiple sources. It gives you an answer. And you can see the answer on the right. Without delving in too much detail, let's focus in again on the response from the AI. The AI told you, it reiterates back to you what it just did, and it breaks it down to where the sources are of the information that it pulled together. So this means it's not a black box. And let's now give it an additional prompt, remove all reviewed rows. This asks it to do another filtering step on that custom listing. It does it. And again, if we look at the prompt, you can see it's telling you, I've updated the results to exclude all records with reviewed status. And it again indicates the 3 data sources and where it applied this filtering based on review status. You'll notice that it actually blocked reviewed status from demographics, from adverse events, and from concomitant medications independently, which may or may not be what you wanted. So your follow-up response to this might be to focus in, oh, no, I meant just reviewed status on adverse events or something. But this is just an example of the approach we're taking to try to apply AI in Signals Clinical that in a way that allows the user to ask a question. Say the standard table isn't exactly what they're looking for. Well, they can simply ask for a particular listing with the characteristics they need to see. And it will provide an answer, that listing, and it will also provide evidence of how it arrived at that so you can reconstruct it independently. So with that in mind, that can really drive data science, I think. And so what we're hoping is that the combination that you'll join us in the future and work with us as we work to augment data management and safety review. And I'm providing a link here to our website. And of course, reach out to us with any questions. And with that, I'd like to open it up for questions and answers.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Philip, Don, and Brent, for an excellent webinar. We do have some very good questions that have been submitted, so love to get responses from the team on these questions. One of the questions is around the webinar recording, and we will make the webinar recording available to those who registered for the webinar. So the recording will be made available. The next question is around what's the benefit of importing data to Spotfire from Signals Clinical versus straight from the EDC?
Yep, I'll take a crack at that, Mark. I've sent some information back already, but just to sort of more quickly discuss, the benefits of pulling your data through Signals Clinical rather than directly from EDC or other sources is that, one, you get that integrated review capabilities that Don demoed and Philip mentioned, where you can create those data groupings or cohorts and feed that into the data review process. And see the results of the data review at Spotfire as well. But you also can centralize your data model. You can also have that data search, right, where you can search across all the studies that you have access to, which then also enables your cross-study analysis, right? So there's sort of really 4 benefits that you get if you're pulling the data through Signals Clinical rather than through directly, from your data source, EDC or others, into Spotfire.
Yeah, and to reemphasize that element of not only is the data centralized, but it's been automatically transformed so that it is consistent, not only within one study, but across studies. And that means that you can ask it. Otherwise, the AI question where you're using natural language might not work because, in fact, you may have data from 2 sources. You might have to merge data from 2 different sources. And the AI isn't going to be able to figure out how to merge that if it's not already defined and standardized how it's structured. And that's what Signals Clinical has put into place for you. You don't just access from your source in real time. You access mapped, transformed data, analysis ready from your source data. So yes, it's a powerful advantage having pulling from Signals Clinical versus just from your sources.
Very good. And one more question, is data real time in Signals Clinical, including query status?
Yes, you can define the refresh schedule within Signals Clinical. Obviously, it's dependent upon the data source that it's connected to, but you do have the ability to sort of set that refresh schedule directly within Signals Clinical. So inherently, yes, it is in a real time, but again, it's always dependent upon the data source itself.
And gentlemen, one last question before we close. Can Signals Clinical be plugged into any EDC database?
Yeah, so right now we have direct connections to Viva EDC and also Metadata Rave. We have a variety of sort of FTP connectivity and sort of other flat file connectivity as well. And we sort of continue to sort of build out those sort of capabilities as needed. But that's where we're at right now on the connectivity.
Perfect. Well, thanks to everyone for attending. We're at the top of the hour. Thanks to everyone who attended today. And thanks to our speakers who did an excellent job. You can learn more. There's a link provided to our website. You can learn more about Signals Clinical and our capabilities. And thank you so much. And everyone have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.